Hi folks, Y Guy here. I just want to show you this, something very beautiful, okay, to start this video out. And there's a reason why I want to show this to you. This is out my back door. Okay. The reason I wanted to show this to you wasn't out of pride and vanity. I wanted to, on my very first video I showed you where I've lived, and where I live I should say, in the log home that many people came together and helped me build. And I'm going to use this as an analogy, so bear with me. I'll be inside the house here in just a moment. Okay, thanks for bearing with me. The reason I showed you that out there was because I have a passion and a gratefulness for where I live. And the reason why I have such a great passion for it, and why I'm so grateful, is because there was a time that I lived on the streets. And I know what it's like to live on the streets. I know what it's like being homeless. I know what it's like going hungry. And a lot of people say, well, there's no excuse for that. You know, being in America, there's these shelters and food banks and what have you. And you know, when you're 17, 18 years old, full of pride as well as ignorance, I had no idea those places existed at the time anyway. A young man is especially an angry young man. Even if I knew those places existed, I wouldn't have went. I was too full of pride. However, I know what it's like to almost freeze to death as well. The cold winter nights of Denver, Colorado, out in Washington Park. You know, I had a small dog curled up next to my chest in that sleeping bag, and if it wasn't for that dog, the body heat keeping my vital organs warm, I wouldn't be doing this video today. So I do know what it's like, and that's why I'm so grateful for where I live. Well, this is an analogy. Is what I want to share is oftentimes religious people, and especially those of the Christian sect, they don't know what shoes that other people have walked in. They don't know anything about another person's journey of why they believe what they believe and how they've come to certain conclusions about God and about creation and life in general. And far too many people within the religious system are too quick to point the finger and call something invalid or call something untruth. And make judgment calls, not just on beliefs, but on actual character of people. And this happens far too often. And that's why I would prefer not to be called a Christian. I'd prefer to be called clay, like I've mentioned in other videos, moldable, you know, easily manipulated by the hand of God. Oh, that's something that I'm sure we all desire. So that's something we have in common. Well, normally on these videos, I prefer to talk about the wonders of God and the creation of God and some of the things that He's teaching us, our journey, sharing things with each other. I would prefer that. And I do want to point out areas of, you know, areas of deception that I was previously deceived in. And I do want to point out corruption still. I still want to sow seeds of doubt about some of the things we believe. That'll either make you stronger in that belief or it'll cause you to research. I still want to do that. And that's mainly what I like to talk about in the videos. However, I'm going to pontificate slightly because without knowing what brought me to this major paradigm shift that I came to that causes me to differ now from the vast majority of Christians and what a lot of Christianity considers a cornerstone of traditional Christianity, I'm going to be coming against an area, a very strong area. But people have got to know a little bit of why. And so I'm going to start out by saying I know what it's like, folks, to as a young boy, to be huddled in the closet of huddled in the bottom of the closet while my mom would be screaming profanities at me and beating me with the metal portion of the vacuum cleaner hose. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to not know and to have around a biological father. However, a kind man came along. I'm going to say kind, and you're not going to think so after what I'm going to tell you, but he really was kind-hearted. A kind man came along and adopted me and gave me his name a little later on. But he too, in his immaturity and his insecurities, he would call me horrific names as well when he'd get angry with me, like a lot of parents do. He would call me names like son of Satan, and then there was this, which is ironic, there was this a grandfather figure, member of the family anyway, that everyone despised, everyone hated his guts. Well, my dad would call me by his name every time I did something to irritate him. And it all wasn't one-sided, folks. I'm sure I provoked it, most of his anger. Well, not making excuses, I'm just saying I was not a good kid by any means. Young people, I know what it's like to look in the mirror, look into your own eyes, and to hate oneself. I know what it's like to look in the mirror, flip yourself off, call yourself horrible, horrible names, everything under the sun. And it seemed appropriate. My parents would call me those names on a semi-regular basis as well. I know what it's like to have a hatred for God, bitterness. We're talking a bitter hatred, that I was angry with God for creating me, to even allow me to be born. I hated my parents for obvious reasons, and I did hate life in general, also for obvious reasons. I was so full of anger and confusion. Not only does teenagers go through hormonal changes, but imagine. Anyway, the reason I'm sharing all this isn't to draw pity. No. God lets nothing go to waste. Nothing goes to waste. Okay, so I know what it's like to have a death wish and act upon it. And the hardest part to share, the part that breaks my heart more than anything, I know what it's like to be married to a wonderful, beautiful woman who didn't know the man she was marrying had all this excess baggage. And I know what it's like to put such a wonderful person through things that she didn't deserve to go through. Okay? I know what it's like to lead praise and worship within a church, both large and small congregations, to lead praise and worship to a God that I did not love. Honestly, folks, I had no love for God. Now, that sounds kind of profound. How on earth did you lead worship? It sounds almost hypocritical. No, it wasn't. With all my heart, I did worship God with everything I had inside of me. The thing is, I didn't have the love inside of me to worship God with. However, I had gratitude in me. I was so grateful for God in my life. I was so grateful for what He did. See, I can worship God out of what He did, but I didn't worship Him for who He was and who He is. Okay? You can worship out of gratefulness and not worship out of true love. And our churches are full of people doing that this very day. Okay? Now, church life helped a lot with all this excess baggage. It really did. However, unfortunately, it contributed to an awful lot of the bad, an awful lot of the problem as well. It wasn't just a help. And almost a wash. But really, in God's hands, it wasn't a wash. And let me explain. A lot of the people that I fellowship and hang out with, a lot of them are anti-church people. Obviously, they don't go to church, to an organized church. And my wife and I, we don't go to an organized church either. However, this is where I'll be in disagreement with the majority of them. As I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for anyone else. Is when I look back on all that, I believe more good came out of that experience within the church system than bad. Yes, there's plenty of corruption, plenty of bad. There's a lot of false teaching going on. A lot of doctrines of men. Okay? A lot of traditions of men that will hinder your growth. However, God shined through a lot of that, because love covers a multitude of wrongdoing, of sin, of missing the mark. And a lot of those loving people were there. And a lot of them, they've saved my life as far as I'm concerned. Okay? Now, where we're at today, for the first time in my life, now, it's awesome. Now I know what it's like to love God. That's extraordinary. To walk for 35 plus years and doing all that I did within the religious system and not have a love for God. And now I have a love for God. It's amazing. Now I know what it's like to be in love with my wife. Okay? It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. I missed so many years like that. Now I know what it's like to have no more hatred. I don't hate myself. I don't hate God. I don't hate anybody. It's awesome to have that gone. It's so wonderful. I know what it's like to be free from all that stuff. I know what it's like to have peace. And not the kind of peace that I was taught about within the church system either. And that's some of the things we're going to share in future videos. I now know what it's like to look forward to life. I know I don't have a death wish anymore. I know what it's like to find value in people, even people that disgust me. Yes, people disgust me. The things that I see them doing to one another, watch the news. But I still find value in those people. I know what it's like to care and love for strangers now, like I never did before. How could I love anybody? I didn't love myself, didn't love my wife, didn't love God, so naturally you're not going to love a stranger. Now I know what it's like. Well, something happened. What happened? I'm going to share in future videos the technical end of what happened. I'm sharing the heart end right now, but there's other things that happened along the lines of history and researching history and language and Bible passages and what have you. Yeah, that has a lot to do with it. But primarily, something else happened outside of that. Something that only God can do. Okay? And it wasn't it wasn't a long duration. It happened almost instantaneously. It all came down to one afternoon, sitting in this very chair I'm sitting in now. And all the indoctrination, all the doctrines of men, all the religious Christian false teaching, all that had to be destroyed in me. And it happened in an instant, in a moment. And it's something that only God can do, folks. I reached a point of utter desperation. All the anger, the pain, the sorrow, all of my past came rushing to me. And I know it was God that did it. You know, I wouldn't bring that upon myself. But I've been so angry all my life, and it was time to deal with it. And the root cause of it all. And God did it. I was sitting here playing my guitar, just enjoying the chords. And these memories come rushing back to me, and I started bawling like a baby. And the anger and the memory and the hurt, the sorrow, it all brought even more anger because it was feeding itself. And as I began to holler out to God, all the things that I was angry about concerning Him, He did a wonderful thing. He spoke to me and He said, "Sing to me." So I sang my anger to God, and it went like this. You're just going to see the guitar, because I want you to listen to the words, okay? My heart breaks when I hear the news of innocence suffering pain. I ask myself, the reasons why, when God's alive to sustain His will. There's so much I need to hear, and there's so much to believe. If I'm to walk in victory, I ask the Lord, help me please to see. I know in the depth of my heart that all things will justify. And I know that God in His way will cause us all to rely on His love. I ask myself so many times if what I believe is true, that God so loved the world He gave. It seems to me there's much more for Him to do. I know in the depth of my heart that all things will justify. And I know that God in His way will cause us all to rely on His love. I sometimes blame you, O Lord, for all the pain I feel. Your hand seems so short to me in dealing with this life, a mystery. I know in the depth of my heart that all things will justify. And I know that God in His way will cause us all to rely. Yes, I know in the depth of my heart that all things will justify. And I know that God in His way will cause us all to rely on His love.